Empaths are often seen as soft, quiet, tender, overly emotional. They are the ones who cry in secret, apologize too much, and feel too deeply. But what if that image is only the beginning of the story? What if beneath that sensitivity lies something more powerful than anyone expected? Something that only awakens when pushed too far. Something that even the narcissist, with all their control and manipulation, never truly sees coming. Carl Jung believed that everything we repress in ourselves does not disappear. It grows stronger in the shadows, gaining force and clarity until the moment it must emerge. And the empath, in their silence, in their patience, in their hope that love can fix everything, holds back a force they don't even know they have, until one day they reach a threshold. And when they do, they don't just walk away. They dismantle the entire illusion. This is why the empath is more dangerous than the narcissist ever imagined. At the beginning, the narcissist is in control. They speak with confidence. They set the tone. They charm, seduce, confuse, and spin stories so convincingly that even the empath begins to question their own intuition. The empath tries to love harder, to fix things, to become smaller, more agreeable, more forgiving. They bend so far that they almost forget who they were before the relationship began. But something happens in that bending. A quiet cracking sound begins inside them. The soul starts to resist, and when the empath finally begins to listen to that resistance, the dynamic shifts. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with quiet certainty. At first, the narcissist doesn't notice. They believe the empath will stay in the loop. They've seen the tears before. They've heard the promises. They know how to pull them back in. But this time, the empath isn't afraid of the silence. This time, they're not looking for validation. They're watching, learning, studying the pattern. Carl Jung taught that the process of individuation begins when a person faces their own shadow and integrates it. For the empath, this moment arrives not with rage, but with clarity. They stop denying the truth. They stop projecting the potential they saw in the narcissist. They begin to see what's real. And when that happens, they change. The empath doesn't attack. They detach. They don't fight for control. They reclaim their energy. And that is what makes them dangerous. Because the narcissist feeds on reaction. They need your emotion, your defense, your confusion. That's what gives them control. But when the empath stops reacting, when they begin to observe without engaging, the narcissist feels something they cannot handle. Emptiness. They throw out bait. They push buttons. They guilt trip. They become the victim, then the savior, then the monster again. But the empath is no longer dancing, and this stillness, this lack of response, is more powerful than any revenge. It is the mirror turned back on the narcissist, and that mirror does not flatter. It reflects the truth they've spent their life avoiding. And now, with no one to manipulate, they are alone with themselves. The empath, on the other hand, begins to rise, not as a new person, but as the person they were before they were taught to shrink. They start to reclaim their voice. Their intuition sharpens. Their energy returns. And with it comes a kind of power that is quiet, focused, and unstoppable. They no longer need to explain. They no longer need to be understood. They simply walk away and take their light with them. And that, more than anything, is what terrifies the narcissist. Because the empath was the supply, the mirror, the emotional fuel. And when the empath becomes self-aware, the narcissist loses access to the game entirely. Carl Jung described the shadow as the parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. But when we finally face them, we become whole, and wholeness is untouchable. This is what makes the awakened empath so dangerous, not to others, but to the systems of manipulation that rely on their silence. They no longer seek peace through pleasing. They no longer give their power away in exchange for crumbs of affection. They set boundaries and mean them. They leave when it's time to leave. And they don't come back just because someone says the right thing. The narcissist's power lies in confusion, but the empath's greatest weapon is clarity. And when clarity arrives, everything breaks. Illusions, attachments, cycles, all of it. And in the rubble, the empath does not beg. They rebuild. Not just a life without the narcissist, but a self that no longer fits into the old roles. They begin to attract differently, to speak differently, to move through the world with a new kind of energy. It is not hard, it is not cold, it is precise, it is sacred, because now the empath has boundaries. Now they know that love without respect is not love. Now they see that being needed is not the same as being valued, and the narcissist who once believed they had found the perfect supply now sees only a mirror, and in it, the absence of control. This is not revenge, this is revolution. This is the quiet uprising of the empath, who woke up not to punish, but to live, not to fight, but to be free. And that freedom, that peace, that radiant clarity is what makes the empath more powerful than the narcissist ever imagined, because in the end it was never about overpowering them. It was about remembering who they were before they forgot, and once the empath remembers, nothing can hold them anymore. Before we continue, if you feel like you've given too much, lost yourself in the process, and are finally ready to take your power back, you're not alone. The Jung Method can help you reconnect with your truth and finally stop repeating the patterns that hurt you. The link is in the first pinned comment. Now, let's go deeper. The danger of the empath lies not in destruction, but in revelation. They do not seek to dominate or punish, but once they stop hiding their light, they expose everything that cannot survive in it. The narcissist builds their world on control, on illusion, on image, on having the upper hand, but the empath begins to dismantle all of this the moment they stop needing to be chosen, when the empath no longer fears being alone, when they stop confusing love with sacrifice, when they realize that peace is better than intensity. Their energy shifts. They start to see the patterns, not just in the narcissist, but in themselves. They start asking different questions. Why did I tolerate this? Why did I believe I could fix someone who didn't want to change? Why did I accept crumbs and call it love? This moment of self-inquiry is where the true danger begins for the narcissist, because now, the empath is not just waking up to the other person, they are waking up to themselves, and the most powerful thing in the world is a person who finally sees clearly. Carl Jung taught that when we integrate our shadow, we become whole, and wholeness cannot be manipulated because it has nothing to prove, nothing to earn, nothing to chase. The narcissist, however, continues the same performance. They return with promises, they mirror your growth, they say the words they know you longed to hear. But it no longer lands, because once you've seen someone's soul, once you've felt their silence in your bones, once you've held your own heartbreak without needing them to fix it, you're different, not harder but wiser. The empath begins to notice the difference between guilt and responsibility, between love and attachment, between chemistry and compatibility. This is terrifying to the narcissist, because now, the old tools no longer work, the hooks no longer grab, the gaslighting is met with stillness, the triangulation is met with indifference, the silent treatment is met with silence that doesn't bequeath. The narcissist doesn't understand is that the empath they once knew no longer lives here. They have become something else, not colder, not mean, but rooted, and someone who is rooted cannot be pushed over by words. They do not need closure. They do not need to be understood. They do not need an apology that will never come, because they have given it to themselves. They have cried the tears, written the letters they never sent, grieved the fantasy, faced the mirror, and chosen to live. This is the power of the healed empath, not to destroy others, but to walk away and not look back. The narcissist, in their confusion, begins to spiral because their control was never physical, it was emotional, and now that emotional leverage is gone. What they once read as vulnerability, they now see as clarity. What they once mistook for weakness, they now realize was strength in disguise, because it takes far more strength to feel deeply and walk away than to feel nothing and stay. Carl Jung believed that each person holds both light and shadow, and true power comes from integrating both. The empath has always had power, they just gave it away in the name of love, but now they reclaim it, not with rage but with boundaries, not with revenge but with vision. They stop playing the old role, stop auditioning for love, stop fixing people who benefit from staying broken, and that decision, that moment of reclamation, is the earthquake, because the narcissist did not lose a weak person, they lost the most loyal, intuitive, loving force they ever had, and deep down, they know they will never replace that energy. They may find others, but the connection will never feel the same, because the empath was not a mirror. They were a doorway to healing, to reflection, to truth, and the narcissist, unwilling to walk through it, chose the illusion instead. But now the doorway is closed, and the empath has become the gatekeeper of their own soul. This changes everything, because now they no longer seek to be needed, they seek to be seen. They no longer beg for love, they embody it, and they no longer settle for someone who says the right thing. They wait for someone who lives it. This is the danger of the healed empath, not to the world, but to every system that thrives on people staying asleep. They see the games and stop playing. They hear the lies and stop explaining. They feel the pull and choose not to follow, because now their love has direction. Their attention has standards. Their energy has protection, and this, more than any revenge, more than any confrontation, more than any dramatic ending, is what breaks the cycle. Because the narcissist doesn't fear anger, they thrive on conflict. What they fear is silence that speaks truth, distance that doesn't close, love that no longer chases, eyes that see them clearly and do not flinch. The empath becomes dangerous the moment they stop trying to be loved by someone who cannot love. The moment they stop hoping that empty hands will one day offer something full. The moment they stop offering themselves as a lifeline to someone who never intended to swim, and in that moment they become untouchable, because now they are no longer performing. They are becoming. Carl Jung said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul, but the empath, when fed up, does the opposite. They face it all, the pain, the betrayal, the longing, the shame, the grief, and they let it burn, and from those ashes, they rise not as who they were before, but as who they were always meant to be. Not everyone will understand this transformation. Some will call them selfish, cold, distant, but that is only because they can no longer be controlled. And freedom always looks threatening to those who benefit from your captivity. The healed empath walks with quiet power, not because they seek to impress, but because they have nothing left to prove. They are done explaining, done shrinking, done waiting. They are no longer trying to save anyone. They are finally saving themselves, and that is the energy the narcissist cannot touch, cannot control, cannot replace, because the empath has become something rare. Not just intuitive, not just kind, but awakened in a world of projection and performance. Someone who is awake is the most dangerous energy of all, because the empath has become something rare, not just intuitive, not just kind, but awakened in a world of projection and performance. Someone who is awake is the most dangerous energy of Albert. What makes the empath truly powerful is not just awareness, it's what they do with it. They don't just walk away, they walk differently, with purpose, with boundaries. With a quiet understanding of what they will never accept again, they start to choose differently, not from fear but from truth. They begin to honor their time, their energy, their softness, their knowing. They no longer romanticize intensity. They seek safety, they seek consistency. They seek souls that feel like home, not fire. This is when the empath's power becomes visible to the world, because they stop hiding it behind service. They stop pouring into people who refuse to receive. They stop sacrificing their peace for someone else's chaos, and now they attract what matches their new vibration, not the taker, not the manipulator, but someone who sees them fully and meets them there. The narcissist watches from a distance, confused, disoriented, because their version of power required someone to be small, to be unsure, to be dependent. But the empath is none of those things anymore. They are clear, they are present, they are enough. This is not a fantasy. This is the reward for healing, not perfection, but freedom, and once tasted, the empath will never give it up again.